You and Bill have launched what is this annual Goalkeeper report from now until 2030, obviously, when the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, will hopefully be met by the world community. And it's to make sure that every dollar spent to alleviate poverty has maximum impact.
We realize that if we want to make progress against these goals, we have to track and report on the data, because that progress is what makes things change, but the progress isn't inevitable. And without data, we won't know year by year how we're doing.
In the report, you write, there is more doubt than usual about the world's commitment to development. What do you mean?
I think people are a bit skeptical. They wonder where their money's gone. Should we be spending it instead in the United States or in my own country? And what we want to point out to people and that we need to keep doing is that, you know, these huge drops, you know, poverty cut in half, maternal mortality cut almost in half, childhood death cut in half. If it wasn't for these investments, we wouldn't see that incredible progress. We wouldn't see this tidal wave that came of HIV being brought down so substantially. But we have to continue those investments. If we don't, those things will come back and will be on the rise.
Through this report, you track 18 key data points that are fundamental to this. One of them, and number one in the report, is child mortality, which is a proxy for so much else and also a leading indicator. How are we doing? By looking at how many children are dying.
Right.
How are we doing?
We're doing incredibly well. Since 1990, we have halved the number of children who die under the age of 5. That's incredible progress. And so what it means is that a mother or father who lives in a low-income country, they can count on when their child is born on them surviving. And if a mother and father knows that their children will survive into adulthood, they're going to naturally bring down the number of children they have. And then it means they can invest in those 2 or 3 kids' education, and those kids can go on to participate in the economy and have a productive job.
Maternal mortality, moms staying alive.
Yeah.
Another huge data point. That has shown a lot of progress, right? The report details the number of mothers who've died has been cut in half in the past generation. Is there a lesson from that success to use elsewhere?
Absolutely. And one of the countries is Ethiopia, second most populous country in Africa, incredibly important. They realize that when women give birth in a clinic instead of at home, the woman is much more likely to survive and the child is more likely to survive. So they made 15,000 little health clinics. They're tiny, they're not very big. They train the healthcare workers. There's an army of 45,000 women now that staff these clinics. And they did all the right cultural things. Women didn't want to go to the clinics because they said, well, I need the traditional birth attendant or the religious leader.
Right.
So they have those people going with them. And as villagers started seeing more pregnant women surviving, guess what? They started going to the health clinics more. And so Ethiopia has dropped its childhood mortality significantly just in the last 8 years.
You also note in this report, you say we know that some of these goals are not attainable by 2030. Are we at an inflection point, at a tipping point right now where it could go either way?
Absolutely. If we don't keep making these investments, if the U.S. doesn't keep up its funding for foreign aid or other countries don't, we will fall back.
But how do you convince the powers that be in Washington how important this is to do it? You've been spending time at the White House a lot recently and with members of Congress. Are they hearing you?
I think they are, and I think it's up to Congress to keep up this funding around foreign aid. We saw some proposed cuts that were pretty extreme coming out of the Trump administration, but these have been bipartisan issues that have had a lot of support over time. So it's our job and our partners' jobs to keep up and make Congress know this progress has happened.
Poverty elimination has always been a goal of your foundation. There's a really fascinating anecdote about what's happening in India. Not an anecdote, a reality check about what's happening in India right now. As the country has gotten richer, fewer women are working there, and that's concerning too.
It is concerning. So one of the things we learned that as India implemented a financial system where you can go in and literally, even if you're illiterate, with your thumbprint, you have an ID number. And so if a woman goes into the workforce, her wages go into her own account, not the husband or the head of the household's account. And as she started to get more wages in her account, she started working more, she started switching into other industries, and she started spending the money on her family.
You have a big name supporter in President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama. President Obama in New York this week with you promoting this? Should we expect more joint efforts between the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Obamas?
Well, I think we'll wait and see. I mean, they have to really define what it is they're going to work on. But I think one of the things President Obama has spoken already very eloquently about is he wants to bring up young leaders.
Yeah.
Leaders of the future who are part of making change for the world. So you can expect that we're going to work with him on that. We believe in young leaders. We want to highlight young leaders. We want to bring them forward. So of course, if he does that, we're going to work with them, and we'll see what else they're going to work on over time.